Here's a great sample of what happens when you surge the pipe. This pipe got hit by a surge where a person opened the valve at the front end. It was a quarter turn valve. In this case, it happened to be just a ball valve on a 2-inch line, a 2-inch ball valve, and this operator, I happened to be there at the site when this happened, and he said, well, we're going to turn the water on. This was a turf system. And so he went, put his tool down in the ground on that ball valve and went, instant on. 110 pounds of pressure from the city water main at that instant, runs down the pipe about 500 feet, hit the end of the pipe where the valves were, and the valves were attached right here, and it just shattered this pipe backward up to the next joint, which happened to be right here where there was an elbow on the line. It came down a pipe about 500 feet, hit an elbow here, went sideways into this valve box, and it just split this piece that's about 8 feet long. There's a longitudinal split all the way down this pipe to this elbow. And I want to tell you, that was a dandy. You can actually see the split in the pipe there. And it just split the whole, and that's how PVC will split. It'll split longitudinally. It'll open a seam like that. And here's the end that matched up to it right here. It kind of took out that elbow a little bit too, and then it just sheared off over here. But that was, that's water hammer. That's the kind of destruction that just a little old 2-inch pipe can end up being abused by with water hammer. And it split the fitting. Right in the seam of the fitting, it even split the fitting. So that was quite a little jolt that come down that pipe. Here's another example of a piece of, and this is a more interesting one because here's a piece of pipe that had been out exposed to the sun, so it was more brittle to begin with, and this is another water hammer break that occurred, and this one, it just kind of shattered the pipe. And we talked about what pipe starts to look like when it sits out and gets ultraviolet ray deterioration. Well, this yellowing effect is exactly that case. So, you know, they probably got a real deal on this pipe, probably been sitting in somebody's pipe yard for 3 or 4 years out in the sun, and not good. Let me pass that little guy around too. It even can happen in small pipe. Here's a little guy. Again, this was a case where they had a ball valve at a water shutoff on a domestic irrigation system, a residential system, and the homeowner went out and turned the valve on. And it was a quarter turn valve, and he just went into the valve box and turned it on. And the pressure here in this town, usually static pressure early in the season like that, can easily be 100 psi. And that water went down that pipe, hit the end elbow on the manifold, and just split the liver out of the end of that manifold right there. And it took out the fittings as well as the pipe, because the greatest impact hit right on the elbow. Bob?
Does that actually, where it fades like that, does that actually weaken or damage the pipe?
Yes, you bet. That pipe's been deteriorated molecularly. It's damaged its normal strength. Doesn't make it thinner, makes it weaker.
So are automatic timers calibrated so that they do turn them on gradually?
Well, the pipe on automatic, the question is, are automatic timers calibrated so they turn them on slowly? No, the timer turns the solenoid instantly on. All of the valves that are designed today are what we call slow opening. It takes them a little bit of time to open up. They don't just come all the way open instantly. And so you don't get the surge down a particular lateral. But again, with the lateral line, you have protection because you have places for that pressure to vent out every one of the sprinkler heads. So you have protection on a lateral line from this real bad surge effect, pretty much. Now, I've actually seen center pivots where they can have extremely high pressures at the front end of some center pivots, open the valve up, and it'll be like a 6-inch valve feeding that 6 5/8 line, and it'll shoot down that pivot. And it's true, water's being emitted from it, but that water's going really fast. When it hits the end of the pivot, I've actually seen the pivots hop off the ground. And you're talking a couple of 3 or 4 tons that is literally hopping off the ground from when it hits the end of that pipe. And just hope to heck the flanges hold in a case like that. You know, it's all steel pipe, so it's pretty stout, but you could end up damaging. It's really tough on the sprinklers, and if you have pressure regulators, it's really hard on pressure regulators to do that. But the new valves and the new technology in valves allows a slow fill so that it doesn't just open all the way up wide open instantly. It opens gradually so the line can fill at a more gradual speed. Yeah. And also, most of the lines will have water in them already once they've been operated during the season. So you're not having to refill the whole line every time you start it up in a lot of the solid set cases. With pivots, wheel lines, hand lines are going to be totally empty usually, and you have to refill them every time you restart them. So you have to be aware of that. Yeah, you have to, like on a wheel line, you don't just put the opener on it and crank it open as fast as you can. You crank it open 4 or 5 turns, let it fill. As soon as the line fills, then go ahead and finish with it. Yeah, some of you know. Some of you just crank them on as fast as you can and leave. Yeah, I know how some of you operate. You know, get on with it and get out of here. Well, you know, you're damaging your system when you do that potentially. So surge is a big problem.